Engineering design process. The engineering design process is a systematic, iterative problem-solving method which produces solutions to meet human wants and desires. It involves the scientific method, but there is also a difference between scientific method and engineering design process. The scientific method has a starting point where you have a hypothesis and you have a defined linear procedure. Where engineering design process, you may begin with making some type of guess or hypothesis about what it is that you want to solve and how you're going to solve it. It also involves human needs and wants. But it is a continuous improvement process, and you define and identify the constraints in your design. There are a variety of formal and informal problem-solving strategies and models beyond the scientific method and the engineering design process. The process of engineering design takes into account a number of factors. Science is a study of the history of human natural world and how the natural world works based on observable physical evidence. The scientific method processes of discovery and demonstration, and there are specific steps in the scientific method where you name the problem, you form your hypothesis, you test your hypothesis, you interpret your results, and you report your results. What is engineering design? It is a systematic application of mathematical, scientific, and technical principles. The engineering design process is a systemic, iterative, which means it is performed over and over again until you solve the problem. And it has criteria and constraints which you consider at the beginning, during, and the end of your process. And it's used to develop many possible solutions to a problem to satisfy human needs and wants. So here are the steps of the engineering design process. You define the problem, you brainstorm for possible solutions, you generate ideas, research the ideas, specify your criteria, and identify your constraints. You consider alternative solutions, select an approach, develop a written proposal or your design folio, design proposal, make a model or prototype, test and evaluate it, you refine and create it or recreate it, and you communicate your results. So the engineering design steps, there are 12. When you define the problem, you are clearly outlining the human need or the want that exists to solve the problem. For example, a company might call you in and ask you to solve a problem of the company's losing money. You determine why the company is losing money and what problem needs to be fixed. This is where more than one person is involved. The brainstorming process. The designers generate the ideas without consideration of limitations to the design. You generate the ideas to let your imaginations run free with no constraints and given suggestions from the brainstorming session. Researching the idea. You research to determine if the solution to the problem already exists. Designers begin to explore the possibilities generated during the brainstorming session and the research gathered. Identifying the criteria and the constraints. You identify the criteria and specific constraints that will provide the basis for what the design should be and what its limits are. Consider alternative solutions. Other solutions could work just as well as the one selected by the designer. The other solutions might be simpler or less expensive and therefore more desirable. It truly depends on what your goal is and whether or not you have to consider trade-offs. Select an approach. Based on the analysis, the designer chooses the solution that best meets the criteria and the constraint. In the event that the solution does not work, the designer may need to repeat these steps. That is why it is called iterative. You develop your well-written proposal, and it specifies what the design will look like, so there will be sketches, and what the resources are and that are needed to develop it. You make your model or prototype. A model is a proportional design. A model is a replica of the original model. It may be larger or smaller than the original design. The prototype is the model that can be tested. A physical model, mathematical model, graphic models, they are all used. A prototype performs exactly as the final solution and is used for testing. A mock-up physically looks like the final solution but does not perform as the final solution. Testing and evaluating your design. Models and our prototypes are tested and data is collected from testing to assist in the next step. Refine and create the design. Refinements and optimization include function, economics, and whether or not it is ethical. Is it safe? The product is then mass-produced to be sold to the target market. Designers and engineers work together to design a cost-effective and time-efficient process for producing the product. Designers need to communicate their results to perpetuate the innovation, and so others with similar problems can learn from their design. Communication of a design process can include design folios, journals, drawings, sketches, and schematics.